Is my mic working? Am I on? Good. All right, it is 6 o'clock, and I am calling into order the Historic and Architectural Review Board meeting on Monday, November 7th, 2022. Do I have an approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Oh, I got Ms. Parker seconding. All right, any comments on the agenda? Public comments on the agenda? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, agenda is approved. All right, a couple housekeeping items real quick. Ms. Polo will not be here today. Mayor Marlowe actually just texted me as well. The mayor will not be present at this meeting tonight. So you are aware, I believe it is for the Historic and Architectural Review Board. As a disclaimer, it is 6 on the dais at the moment. If a vote splits for whatever reason, 3-3, it will actually go down as a denial. But it doesn't mean that it's denied and it's never going to be talked to. It just goes to the city commissioner or the board of adjustments as we do not recommend, and it would go as a 3-3. Versus normally having a board of 7, it can go 4-3 or whatnot. Recognize and Ms. Polo's absent and Mayor Marlowe is absent. I do want to give a warm welcome to our newest member. How are you?
Good.
So Kathy has joined us, Miss Kathy Thomas, and we are very thankful and fortunate that she's accepted the role. So welcome to the Historic Board.
Thank you.
And welcome to the Planning and Zoning later. With that being said, Kathy, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, sure, yes. And we're pledging? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Thomas. I have the consent agenda. Move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any comments? Public comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, consent agenda moves. We are going to go ahead and move to public hearings and ordinance. I don't have a city attorney.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be started.
Okay. All right, folks, just give me 1 second as I get my bearings straight on the fact that we don't have a city attorney, but I know that I, on a quasi-judicial, can read into the ordinance. However, I do enjoy the presence of our attorney.
I'm calling him right now.
Other than that, how's everybody's week been going so far? Good? Everybody had a good weekend?
Busy.
I'd like to thank Ms. Parker for her Halloween treats for the adults and children. It was very nice.
Thanks, it's very fun.
Not getting an answer on the city attorney. Okay. Sorry, folks, for the delay here. Hey. Speaking of the devil.
Oh, my God.
You're not the devil, Scott.
Hey, I just called Detroit looking for you.
Hey, Janine, can we put on the AC? I'm like sweating over here.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Made you nervous.
Did.
Having to do all the bikes in.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, perfect. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to go over, since the city attorney's here, I'll go over quasi-judicial rules and proceedings. Just so you're aware, we are entering into a quasi-judicial procedure. This means that the commission will stop being a legislative board and will become a judicial board, which means that we have to follow certain rules and adhere to different standards of decision-making. The primary rule we must follow concerns testimony, and the substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when the judicial board makes a decision. This standard states the following: all public testimonies will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examinations. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to the experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of records. Basically, folks, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. At this point, we do not, we're turning into a judicial board, which we are a board of judges, and we have to go by the evidence. As much as we want to go by, people's opinions or feelings or understandings, we would need hard evidence, like a court would require hard evidence to make a decision. So with that being said, before we read into the ordinance, I'm going to ask that the city clerk swear in anybody that's going to speak on any of the matters on the Historic and Architectural Review Board.
Just the two on the historic board?
Just on the hard board.
Okay. Is anybody here to speak on the historic board? Or are you not here? Historic board?
Oh, wow, you guys are here for, how many things are on the P&Z?
You're gonna speak? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. What's your name? Thank you.
All right, so this should be fairly easy, JP. You got nobody against you here. So with that being said, are you good?
Ready?
Okay. I figured I'd give you a little bit.
No, you did. You,
All right,
you
if you
did
can
just perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. If you can read into the ordinance.
Yes, sir. This is resolution number CA 2022-03, a resolution of the Historic Architectural Review Board of the City of Newberry, Florida, for approval of a certificate of appropriateness as authorized under Section 1111 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations for the demolition of a detached single-family home and identified contributing structure, Florida Master Site File, Site ID 8AL2425, on land which lies within the Historic District, located at 90 Northwest 255th Street, tax parcel number 02164-000-000, repealing all resolutions in conflict, providing effective date. The appropriate motion at the appropriate time is to pass resolution number CA 2022-03.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
At this point, I'm also going to ask if any of our board members had any ex parte communications, disclosing if any member physically inspected the property, talked to anybody that could influence your voting decision on this particular matter. Ms. Parker?
No.
Mr. Montal? No. Ms. Thomas? No. Ms. Baker?
No.
No. I'm an admin on a forum that recently got wind of this happening, and I had no comments on the situation. However, I did read, a few derogatory comments and a few positive comments of understanding and some not so understanding, but has no sway in my decision on the judicial board. So with that being said, I'm going to go through the order, which will be a staff will give an overview. The applicant will present, if there is an applicant. The staff will then go ahead and give a report and recommendation. We have no contacts from third-party interveners, is that correct, from city staff? No third party?
On any of the items.
So we have no third-party interveners. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. The applicant can cross-examine. Since we don't have third-party interveners, there's no cross-examination of them. Staff may cross-examine. Members of the decision-making body, through the chair, may ask questions of staff, applicant, and the participants. Final argument may be made by the applicant. The staff related solely to the evidence and testimony presented at the hearing and introduced into the record. I'll ask the city attorney to advise the decision-making body to actually do that now. Advise the city decision-making body as the applicable law and factual findings to approve or deny any of the application.
Competent and substantial evidence, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Sure.
We will deliberate, and after deliberation, a vote shall be taken to approve with the conditions, continue, or deny the application. hopefully nobody else walks in and I don't have to repeat all that again. Here. No, we're good now. JP, go. You're live.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Paul Perez with the City of Newberry Planning and Economic Development Department.
Oh, it's going down here. Okay, hang on.
And give me just a moment, having troubles advancing the slides, so.
Okay, hang on. Off over here.
All right. Thank you, Janine. And so the request before you tonight is to demolish a single-family home located in the City of Newberry Historic District. The house is a contributing structure to the Historic District. It has a Florida Master Site File, 8AL 2425. The request is to demolish the home. Though not made part of the application, it's staff's understanding that once the house is removed from the site, they'll be using that area of the site to construct a parking lot for the use of the church that's adjacent to it, also a historic structure. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial image of the home. You can see where it's located. Just throw a rock at it if you wanted to, right across the street from us. Next slide, please. Thank you. So again, it's a request to demolish the structure. The applicant is the church themselves. It is a contributing structure. The house is in Craftsman architectural style, which was a architectural style from early 1900s. It was a combination of more ornate English styles and simple Japanese styles married together to create the Craftsman style of architecture. It is a very prevalent architectural style here in the City of Newberry. You'll see a lot of homes with tapered, with porches and tapered columns and other elements that make up the Craftsman style. Part of the application that's been discussed but hasn't been, part of the application is relocating the structure possibly. There's been a few folks that have been interested in it. Oh yeah, it's working now. Some demolition has already occurred to the house. So this is a Craftsman style. This is the home. An example of a Craftsman style home and some of the key features of a Craftsman style home. This is the house from 2011. Here you can see the house at this time was occupied by a resident. You can see that it was in good repair. A lot of the original, well, it seems like all of the original elements of the home were intact at that time. This is the house today. I took this picture this morning. There has been some demolition that has occurred. The building department has, or I should say, not the building department, but code enforcement has issued I think a notice of violation for work without permit. All the windows have been removed, the doors, some of the louvered openings under the gable have been removed. There's a image of the property today from the north side, and here's an image from of the property from the south side. The house is substantially still intact, and for that reason, staff doesn't find a particular reason why this house should be removed from the site. It's part of the code, so we just went over the current conditions.
Did you just say should be removed?
Should not. Yes, I apologize if I misspoke.
All right, I want to make sure.
Also, a point to note is the FDOT project for the split one-way pairs is that this property is going to be located on a major corridor. So this will be much like some of the historic homes that we have now that have been reused for businesses. Some of the realty offices in the city have done what's called adaptive reuse and converted residential homes into businesses, essentially. This property will be located on one of those major corridors, what is westbound Newberry Road in the future, Northwest First Ave, essentially. With those improvements, this is a conceptual, sorry, I'm having problems with the clicker. Oh, okay, it's working now. With the improvements to Northwest First Ave, this is conceptual, shows a bike lane being added, 2 lanes of westbound traffic, as well as on-street parking on the south side of the street, where the subject property is located. Criteria 1 of our code for demolition, that the structure no longer contributes to the district. That is not the case. That was not staff's findings. Or criterion 2, the demolition of the home is required by some sort of city redevelopment plan, which is not the case. And for those 2 reasons, staff found that the request for demolition failed to meet the criterion that we've established in the code. And because it doesn't satisfy those, we did not find it in compliance with the comprehensive plan, land development regulations, or the historic district standards. All alternatives to demolition have not been demonstrated as exhausted by the applicant, and relocation or adaptive reuse may be possible and of the benefit to the district. There we go. And the recommendation is not actually, is to deny the resolution, the request. Yeah. Oh, did I? Yeah, and that's the wrong item there, so. Yeah, that's the next application. So the recommendation from staff is to deny the request to demolish, or allow the applicant time to consider alternatives to demolishing the home, such as relocating the house to another site, or rehabilitating or doing some sort of adaptive reuse for the structure. That completes staff's presentation.
Thank you, JP. I believe Janine needs to swear in one more individual that came in. Is that correct? Is that what?
Yes, I believe Mr. Martin is going to want to speak on this item.
Okay, if you could just stand up, state your name, and she'll swear you in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And remind me of your first name.
Bill Martin?
Bill.
All right, is Bill, are you the applicant?
I'm the one representing it. I'm a member of First Baptist Church.
Oh,
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I believe that staff just gave inaccurate information in their testimony. And so I know that we're in quasi-judicial, but I've never so thoroughly disagreed with the presentation. And I think that the P&Z needs to hear the honest, the historic board needs to hear the honest information before, and that's not to call JP is new, so he has not been a part of this, but for staff to say that we're not aware and we don't believe that the applicant has exhausted all attempts not to demolish, I just find that patently untrue. So I don't want to rest on staff saying that when I know that the city has been involved for 3 years, probably longer than that. I know I've been involved for 3 years, trying to work with the church to find someone to move the house. So I know this is quasi-judicial, but I feel like the city has to represent the honest information, and we did not give an honest presentation. Again, no fault of staff in this situation because he is a relatively new employee, so he may not be aware of the exhaustive efforts that we have tried to work with so normally I would wait, but when I feel like we just gave not true information, I think we have to rectify that before the applicant even speaks.
all right, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to stop you right there, actually, and ask the city attorney. The mayor giving that statement, does he have to be any kind of swearing in because technically we go off of expert opinions and testimonies, and even though his concern is very valid and it's actually quite interesting, especially given what we just heard, does he have to be sworn in? Is there anything that needs to be done to make sure that goes on the record and doesn't get used against us saying, well, he technically should have not said anything, it's up to staff.
No, Mr. Chair, I think that can be considered in the nature of early deliberation.
Okay.
So, what I always say is you don't check your common sense at the door. So you know the community. Each member of the Planning and Zoning Board knows and understands our community. Each member knows a great deal about the history, and you don't divorce that knowledge when you sit on this dais. So as you go through the evening and you deliberate what it is to do in this instance, you can apply that knowledge and that history with what you know to be the case as far as each application is concerned.
Yeah, my biggest concern is just like, since we are in quasi judicial, I just didn't want, if we motioned something and then that had weighed precedence on our decision making, if something could happen that they can appeal something because of the fact that the mayor spoke up, even though he's technically not city staff or however they want to determine it, and to try to overturn any kind of ruling that we decide today.
No, I think you make a determination. The mayor and I just had a conversation about this a week ago.
All right.
And expert testimony is what we talk about, and we're going to create a better definition of what expert testimony is in our quasi-judicial procedures.
All right.
And we always say in these proceedings that expert testimony relates to the planners or engineers and that sort of thing. We typically say that. But really, under Florida law, expert testimony is not just that. So if you have an expertise, if you're Bill Martin and you've been building all your life, he may have some construction background and may be able to speak to that, even though he's not a building contractor. But you have certain expertise in your background. So, but the same goes with each of you, that you have your expertise in your specific. If we're talking about insurance, you have a lot of background and history on that. So everybody has their own specific background and knowledge. In this instance, what the mayor is talking about is knowledge about the specific application, about this matter that's before us this evening. So I think what he did was more supplemental to the application process than probably anything else.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. And I don't think you can, just to finish out what you were asked, I don't think a reviewing court would say, okay, this is improper because you have knowledge of something that is the background and history.
No offense, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure that
No,
any
it's a
decision,
good
yeah, we
question.
want to make sure
Good
that.
question.
So,
It's a question that I would ask, and no offense is taken.
Okay.
But I also, I think in terms of representing the city, in this case, I actually know more than the city employee that just gave the presentation that said the city had no knowledge of any efforts to move the house. So I'm trying to amend the city stance because I don't want the applicant to also say, wait a minute, we've worked with you for years on this.
yeah, I mean, and that's kind of where I led to when I asked JP to repeat himself when he said do or do not. I was like, wait a minute, where are we going with this? All right, so with that being said, staff gave their overview and actually their report and recommendation to us. At this time, I'm kind of working somewhat backward here. The applicant, correct? You have no time limit, so please, if you have a presentation, share with us. If you did bring any information to share with us, that's awesome. It's all in your mind. That's a beautiful thing. I would love to hear it. So,
Well, I'm not an expert like this gentleman here, but I've been a resident of Newberry for 74 years. I know about the house. Like you mentioned, I have built 3 houses myself, built one, sold it, built another one. I'm a union electrician. I'm retired, so I have building construction background. But we bought the house about 8 years ago because it came up for sale and we wanted the property. But when we got the house, we tried to use it for our youth. That didn't work well because the city came in and condemned it. They took the power and cut it. We couldn't get heat in there, we couldn't get water in there, we couldn't get anything else, so we had to move back into the church with the youth. Since then, we have, and we love the house. I don't want to see it destroyed, but I have, for 3 years now, put it out there, and people on the city commission know, it may not be you guys, but I came to the city and said, we got the old house. If you want it, we'll give it to you if you have a place to put it. And the guy that I talked to is not here, I don't think, but he said, we'd love to have it. Let me see what I can do about a piece of property. 2 months, 3 months went by, and I went back to him and said, look, we got to do something with this house because we need to move it. We had 8 to 9 different people come by, we want the house. Let me get a piece of property, and I'll move it on it. All of those failed. They couldn't afford the house moving expense, or they could not get a piece of property to put it on. So this went on for a while. Like I said, we then come up, we got to do something with it. It's rotten on the inside. The front porch is rotten at the corners. I took some lights down on the inside because they were antique, gave them to somebody in the community. That house is going to be in this, scattered in this community, probably between 20 and 30 people. They've got things out of it. Like the man said, we took the windows out because people want them. I didn't want to get them destroyed. We took the doors out and gave them to people. We don't want to give them destroyed. And it's got down to the point, I did not know that we could not do this with our own personal property. It belongs to us. We have tried. Nothing happened. And now, at the 9th hour, somebody called the church and said, hey, y'all don't have a permit. So I called the demolition people, and they had a permit, but I believe it was Alachua County. So somebody said, you got to come get one from us. They came down, I believe, and got one from you guys, or tried to. So now we're waiting on you guys to okay it so we can move it. But the house is not movable. It's rotten. The ceiling's rotten in the living room. The front porch is rotten. We take the boards off the windows. They're termite eaten. I can show you the boards. But we did not want to do this. We tried everything we could do to get that house to somebody that could use it. Any questions?
Well, we'll definitely get to that here shortly, Mr. Martin. And I appreciate you coming up and speaking to us on this. So at this point, if you can, we're gonna not table, but I'm gonna open it up for any kind of public comments if anybody has any comments. And then so you understand, you can cross-examine once public comments are done, and then the city can cross-examine. And then at that point, we will ask questions to you, to the city, just to get more clarification. So at this moment, thank you so much. I am gonna just go ahead and open it up for public comments. Oh, you all right? Yeah, you're good. All right, with that being said, is there any public comments on this particular matter? I know there was hundreds and hundreds of comments on Facebook on this matter, and it's sad to see that nobody showed up for this one. I don't see any public comments. Mr. Martin, the applicant, you can cross-examine the city at this point if you wish.
No, it's our house. I don't see how I need to. It's, it can't be used.
Staff, you can cross-examine at this point.
John Paul Perez with planning. Do want to apologize. There was some information that I was not made privy to. Some critical information that probably would have changed my presentation. Probably a lot. And it's unfortunate that we're at this point, and in Newberry things are a little bit more colloquial. And so the application, it didn't have like a termite inspection report or kind of all the things that would typically go into like a request to demolish a historic structure. especially when it has a site ID with the state. But given that, it does seem that, all alternatives have been exhausted, and, there has been ample opportunity for this structure to be saved. And it turns out that the fate of the structure probably is not to be saved, unfortunately, because it is what they identify as like an excellent example of craftsman architecture from that period. So with that, staff would change their recommendation that unfortunately, because we can't salvage it, and seems, again, I haven't been part of it, but a lot of effort has been put towards trying to save the structure, that staff would recommend approval of the request.
All right, thank you, JP.
Thank you.
So with that being said, members of the decision-making body, through the chair, may ask questions of the staff, applicant, and the participants.
Well, I don't have any real questions, but the fact that they've tried to do the whole process of moving it, finding someone to buy it, finding a way to get it restructured, and not being able to do it, I really don't see a reason why. They've exhausted everything to not be allowed them to go through the process of demolishing it, because what else can you do other than, you can't do anything with it. So, going through the process and you not knowing all the information as well kind of puts you at a bad spot. So I really don't see any reason.
I do want to just take a quick moment here before I give my board the rest of the time. I do want to thank the applicant, and I actually want to thank you, JP, for it takes a lot out of somebody to kind of say, hey, you know what, we're kind of sorry here that we didn't have this information, and the ability to just stand up and say, hey, you weren't privileged to that information at the time. You're going off of what you had currently. So I do appreciate your efforts and understanding where Mayor came from, where the applicant's coming from, and actually reversing your recommendations to the board. So thank you. I'll take it back to my board here.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. I just have, some comments that I'd like to, state for the record. Obviously, the city of Newberry, at some point, the city commission, the city decided that historic preservation was something that was important to the city, which ended up creating this National Register district. And I understand there's a ton of mitigating circumstances that have gotten us to this point today, but that structure is significant. I mean, it's not a small little bungalow. It's a very significant structure. And my concern is that, what's happened to that structure could happen to any structure that's in the historic district. And again, the process to determine whether or not it's structurally sound or not structurally sound is usually a process. I know from living in the historic district that when these things come up, that the applicant typically has to demonstrate that the structure is not restorable. Or again, we found that there's no one that wants to take the house and move it. You establish that. But is that something that is, and again, I'm maybe asking staff, is there a procedure that has to be followed in the city ordinances that describes the procedure for actually taking the house down and demolishing it? I mean, to what proof has to be presented to the staff and to the board? Is there a process? I'm asking. Is there something they have to do to establish that?
So like a due diligence kind of
Yeah,
thing?
kind of a due diligence. I mean, you hire a structural engineer that
Right.
goes through
Step by step.
and actually inspects the house. Does a pest control company go see the extent of termite damage? Yeah.
Hey.
Okay. Again, I'm not privy to all that. I wasn't on the board then, but I'm just asking the questions at this point. Yeah.
So does this? So if I'm understanding, it's like this. Do you guys have a procedure in the sense to go like if there's evidence of 3 years of hey termites, hey electrician, hey rust, hey all this stuff, or is it just like hey there's just busted windows, we're gonna go ahead and condemn it?
Is that to me?
No, that's the staff. Sorry, I'm trying to understand what staff stuff is to condemn Oh,
So, regarding condemning a structure, I'm not fluent in. Regarding demolishing a historic structure, typically demolition by neglect is not something that's usually acceptable, though it does happen on a very regular basis. If it's intentional, it's usually something that will be cured. But as far as actually demolishing the structure, say it gets approved tonight to demolish it, are you talking about salvaging some of the craftsmanship that went into the house, or?
No, I'm just saying, how is an expert required to determine if the structure
Generally,
is
yes.
sound or not?
Generally, yes. There will be a report that will be submitted along with the application that shows that, there's been termite damage beyond repair, there's
Right.
been some sort of mold or deterioration of the structure beyond repair.
Okay, and has anything like that been submitted with the applicant at
Staff.
this point?
I have not received it.
Okay, all right.
JP, you might want to stay up for this one. Question on if it gets demolished and turned into a parking lot, how does that impact our historic district in the sense of, I mean, we want to be a historic district town. If more and more, unfortunately, like a lot of these homes, let's be honest, a lot of these homes are generationally built. They're hand down to children. Children sometimes uproot and leave, and the house never gets taken care of. And then in this situation, where it can happen in a different situation where the house gets abandoned, and here we are again with a termite-ridden house, a house that's not structurally sound, and the applicant's like, well, I'll just turn it into a parking lot that way because if you guys bring in, I don't know, a bar or a brewery, I can rent out that parking lot. How does that start impacting our historic downtown area?
Well, eventually, it's not uncommon for historic structures to be demolished, especially when there are many examples of that type of historic structure available, unless it's tied to an actual person or event, and it has some sort of cultural significance to the district. But if it's for preservation of the architecture, as long as that's not the last example of that type of architecture within the district, generally there will be an acceptance to demolish some of the historic homes within a district. That has been a cause for a historic district to lose its certification. But if it's rampant, then it could be something that comes under review by the state. But as I stated in my report, this is an excellent example of the craftsman style architecture. It's not the only one. There are many other within the district itself. So if this were to disappear, that legacy would still exist within the district itself. However, this is it's quite an exceptional home. But yeah, does that answer the question?
It does. It's just like it just feeds into the fear of if we approve something like this to happen to this one. Let's just say that the next applicant, everything's case by case. I understand this is quasi judicial. Everything's a case by case situation. I just don't want them to use this particular case to motivate somebody else to say, well, I can just go ahead and do this and let it go. I'm not saying that will happen. I try for our citizens to try to make sound judgments on what's going on now and how it can have precedence on future land use in the historic district. I understand the applicant completely. I'm on board. I'm on board with the city. I'm just looking at what the ripple effect could be of this going forward with other houses in the area with similar design. Ms. Parker, did you have a?
Yeah, I have a question about condemning the house. So once it's condemned, I'm just not knowledgeable. What is the process of coming back? You said the electric's cut, the water's cut. How does someone come back from that once a historic building is condemned at that point?
Yeah, I understand condemned to mean it's uninhabitable. Doesn't mean it's not able to be repaired, it's just uninhabitable. Eventually, what happens to those structures is there's already a disinterest. What they will ending up on an unsafe structures board for required demolition if the owner itself isn't already going to go in there to demolish the structure. So typically once it ends in some sort of condemnation, it's inevitable that it'll be demolished.
That answer your question, Ms. Parker? kind of feel like the historic district needs an HOA.
I have a question. I do.
Yes, Ms. Thomas, go ahead.
I was going to remain quiet tonight because I'm new, but I have to ask this, and it could be the incorrect thing to ask. I know in my experience, we have lost a few historic buildings that I would have liked to have seen. However, as much as I'm sentimentally attached to these buildings, it's a fortune to fix them.
Mm-hmm.
And once they are condemned, it's almost impossible to get the permits. My question is there, with us being in the historical district and in that realm, is there any way that these homes, before they're in that kind of disrepair, families can't afford, say it's just like an abandoned home, the families have all moved, and this home is still in Newberry. Who could be responsible monetarily for saving that building before it's in the state that one's in?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we have to wait until, if we want to save, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we want to really save these buildings, and it's so important to us, which it is to me, but if it is, isn't there an avenue we can find that we can visit saving a structure before it's damaged beyond repair and condemned and everything's disconnected to it? Because at that point, it's almost impossible, unless you're independently wealthy beyond belief, to have the structure moved and repaired, get the permits to move it. I mean, it's quite a lot of money. And unless you're just like, very rich.
Yeah,
And
that's a
I
great
mean,
question.
like, Elon Musk comes in and he wants to buy the house, that's great. But most of us here, even if we have money, don't, you usually don't have that kind of money just laying around. It's a lot of money to fix.
Yeah. So
I'd like to see something happen before it gets to that point.
absolutely. One of the benefits of being in a historic district is it makes the property eligible for grants for restoration, rehabilitation. We are in the process of doing another historic resource survey where we're going to go back and look at the 83 identified structures and an additional 40 structures outside of the district. And part of that process is assessing the condition of those properties or structures or sites. And definitely it would need to be an initiative of staff to be more proactive in identifying the properties that could benefit from grant money. It does require cooperation with staff and the owner to achieve these, but we could assist the homeowners with applying and obtaining grants for restoration, adaptive reuse, et cetera. There's money out there to be had. Typically starts around $50,000 that they'll be awarded. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms.
I think there was some question about what is the standards that we apply in this instance. And 11.11.4.2, 11.11.5 is the criteria for approving or denying applications for certificate of appropriateness for alterations, new construction, demolition, relocation. The agency, you all, shall use the following general guidelines. The effect of the proposed work on the landmark or property upon which this work is to be done, the relationship between the work and the structures of the landmark site and the property in the historic district, the extent to which the historic, architectural, or architectural significance, architectural style, design, arrangement, texture, materials, color of the landmark property will be affected, whether denial of the certificate of appropriate would deprive the property owner of reasonable beneficial use of his or her property, whether the plans may be reasonably carried out by the applicant. No certificate for appropriateness for demolition shall be issued by the agency, this board, until the applicant has demonstrated that no other feasible alternative to demolition can be found. The agency may ask interested individuals and organizations for assistance in seeking an alternative to demolition. On all demolition applications, the agency shall study the question of economic hardship for the applicant and shall determine whether the landmark can be put to reasonably beneficial use without the approval of the demolition application. In the case of an income-producing building, the agency shall also determine whether applicant can obtain a reasonable return from his or her existing building. The agency may ask applicants for additional information to be used in making these determinations, including but not limited to evidence that the plans for the new building or site will be implemented. The agency, if the applicant fails to establish the lack of reasonable beneficial use or lack of reasonable return, the agency shall deny the demolition application. The agency may grant a certificate for appropriateness for demolition, even though the designated landmark or designated landmark site has reasonable beneficial use if the agency determines that the property no longer contributes to the historic district or no longer has significance as a historical, architectural, or archaeological landmark, or that the agency determines the demolition of the designated property is required by the Community Redevelopment Agency or the city's comprehensive plan. So those are the areas of our code which relate to demolition of a contributing structure in the historic district. I think probably to give you a little bit of background, the city bought the old white building.
Kincaid Building.
Kincaid building. We bought that 20 years ago. Keith Ashby was our city manager at the time, and the idea was that the city was going to renovate the Kincaid building because it had a great deal of historic importance to the city, both structurally and also historically as far as its use was concerned. So it was a major purchase by the city at that time. I think the city spent about 10 years after that trying to rehabilitate the structure, looking for businesses to partner with the city so that we could save the historic structure. My understanding is that the building was, as was stated by Mr. Martin, it was thoroughly through and through termite infested to the extent that the walls were falling in, and people were prohibited from even going into the structure because it was deemed to be completely unsafe to anyone entering the structure. So I think that in that instance, you look at the economic criteria as much as everybody wanted to save the Kincaid building, and it was a contributing structure historically, socially, and in all ways to our downtown. But unfortunately, sometimes you get beyond repair. And so I think what our criteria in the code is saying is you look at all of these things, the architectural significance, John Paul has already said, it's a contributing structure architecturally, an exquisite example of craftsman style. But you also look at the existing nature of the structure itself and the economics of the situation. That's what our code is telling us.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask the city manager to come up to the podium because I believe he has been intimately involved in this process since the beginning, and I'm hearing questions of process and precedent, and I don't think that this board fully understands the extent to which the city has partnered. I think the applicant is confused. I was confused of why we're here tonight because we have significantly partnered for so long that I think we were all under the impression that we had checked all of these boxes. But I know the extent at which we've done. We've offered to take down the power lines for anybody that will move it at our expense. So, Mr. New, if you would step up and give this board
Is my board okay with
some
having my
idea
come
of
up?
what we've actually done
Hey,
that
can
speaks
I-
to this question of process.
Go ahead, Mike New, if you can step up, and then the applicant can.
Any of you sworn, Mike? I don't know that you.
I do.
Yes.
Mike, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank you for putting me on the spot. Yeah, I would offer to the mayor's point, I don't believe that, at least in the last 8 years, any individual in Newberry has committed more effort to saving the house behind the church than me. When I initially moved here, I wanted to buy a piece of land and put it on there, and my wife said, there'll be no more renovation projects in your future. You don't have the energy, the time for all of that, but I fell in love with that house immediately, and have spent many hours working to salvage the home. I would call it informally because I have no formal training on how you would go about doing that. I have some formal training on construction and things of that nature, but trying to salvage an old home and what our policies and procedures would be, I would turn to JP, who seems to know a lot about it, even though his inexperience in our city was kind of revealed tonight when he was presenting this item. But in my time with the city, I have contacted half a dozen real estate professionals in our community to see if there was a lot that we could move this home to. And would they work on behalf, because I could identify the lots, but running down owners and getting permission to see if they're willing to partner or sell, I lacked the time or the skill to do, and these real estate professionals helped us. I've spoken with, I found 3 house moving companies that provided us proposals to move the home. That mean they had to come from their neck of the woods. There was one from, actually, I think I probably spoke to you about who moves homes. I just didn't tell you the house I was talking about, Joe. So we contacted the firm out of Middleburg, one out of Dixie County, and there's a third one on the list. And the one from Middleburg actually came, is the only one that really stuck with us, gave us a firm quote to move it within the city. As the mayor indicated, we had told anyone that was willing to move the home that within our ability to do it, that all of the utility relocations, the street closures that normally are an expense, that the city would waive those expenses, that we would move power lines, we would move street lights, we would prune trees necessary. The home builders told me there was a couple ways to do it. They were going to take chainsaws and cut the second floor off, set it down and move it as 2 pieces and then put it back together, which I found quite fascinating, that you could actually go to that degree of demolition and still put the whole thing back together. Contacted a number of developers, people that I thought had the capability of taking, and the energy and the enthusiasm for taking on that type of project, including one that's in the room tonight that I have quite a bit of respect for, to see if we could pull it off. All the while having communication with the church about what we were attempting to do. As Mr. Martin said, home is free. You got to get a moving firm to move it. City said, hey, we'll take care of the expenses that we can, but once it got somewhere, we had estimated there was $150,000 to $170,000 worth of work needed to put in an air conditioning system, redo the electrical, redo the plumbing, things of that nature. So, and then once demolition started, I immediately called Brian, who was aware, and said that they've, exhausted all other alternatives. We've been unsuccessful in a 4-year period in finding a lot to put it on and finding a developer who would be interested in taking on the project to renovate the home. So the church had exhausted all those remedies, and I was under the alternatives. I was under the impression that we were now getting to the point that there was a sense of urgency. Either the church wanted to move forward with a project where the house is sitting, or the church felt like that the liability of maintaining the home in a state of disrepair was becoming too great. So, I watched the demolition get started without thinking about whether they had approval from the HARB or not. So then we became aware it hadn't been approved by the HARB, and I'm not sure if at that time they'd had a demolition permit or not. Regardless, that's what we're here for, is to help people understand what our processes are and to help them get in compliance. And so application is in front of the HARB. I think that, it's always worth a shot if there's no sense of urgency to the church, and there's now a lot more people enlightened about the possibility of a renovation project than maybe somebody comes in at the 11th hour and the 59th minute and says, we can make it all happen. But, the windows have already been removed. I understand the back wall's gone. So it's more of a renovation project than it was, the last time I worked on it was probably 4 months ago. But I would say, just in my conversations with our staff, with our community at large, and with the church, there has been significant effort in trying to prevent that house from being demolished, because, in large part, it's because it's beautiful, but also it was pretty heartbreaking to tear down the Kincaid building, which is just a block and a half away. And it was in a lot worse state of disrepair. I think this one had been condemned at one time. I think this one has been salvageable, but it was going to take that investment that the church just wasn't in their business to salvage a home like that. They acquired it simply to get the dirt underneath it, with the hope that someone that was in the salvage business would take it off their property. There's other structures like that in the community, and I'd say that, to Board Member Thomas's question, that there is a passion in the community for old homes, but I'll tell you a passion that I've learned about Newberry, and I say this with a grin on my face, but that they hold even stronger than whether we're going to maintain historic homes, is my land, my property, I decide what to do with it. So we learned that in local government, that we tread lightly on people's property rights here in Newberry, and there's a healthy respect with our commission and our elected officials for that. And I'm not trying to suggest where we should be on any of it. I'm just telling you, you can't work here in my role very long without developing a recognition of our healthy respect for personal property rights. So hopefully, if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. If that building does come down, it's going to be regrettable, but I don't think it will be for lack of trying on a lot of people's parts, but especially the church's part. I think they have worked really hard to see if they couldn't find a good place to move that home to, and to the extent of, we'll give you the home, you just got to bear the expenses of moving. Mr. Chair, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them, or otherwise
I believe one of my
sit
members.
down and be quiet.
No, I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you very much. I do believe you have a question for staff.
Actually, yeah, Mike, so, I mean, this whole history that you provided, and the applicant has also provided, I think typically, maybe at that 3 years ago is when probably it should have come before the board, and maybe to apply to take it down, because it seems like a lot of 3 years worth of effort has gone into this decision. So, I mean, but you can understand, I mean, for someone just driving by it yesterday, not knowing all the history, and seeing, that house, being taken apart without the board having a chance to comment on it. But it seems to me that you have been working with the staff pretty extensively for the last 3 years. And that does make I think it makes a huge difference. So, and I see that if the board does decide to, allow this demolition to take place, is there any, maybe like you said, any last ditch efforts now that it's come to people's attention? I mean, is it going to happen like immediately if the board decides that, or is it going to be a couple of months away? Is there any way a time frame could be assigned to it, or is there an urgency that you want to start this parking lot project immediately? I guess that's for the applicant. What's going on with the schedule for that?
It was supposed to be taken down today.
Okay.
This came up. We're in no hurry. To let you know also, the church owned the property at the corner where the pastor used to live, and we saved that one. We found somebody to take it. Did find out they couldn't put insurance on it until they had a roof put on it. So this house, if anybody got it to move it, to get insurance on it, to move it, they would have had to put a new roof on it. So right now, like you said, $150,000 to repair it, $80,000, $90,000 to move it. But honestly, being here 75 years, the only place I ever lived, the house has been there. I know the people that lived in it. The older members of our church did not want to see this happen. But we had no other alternative because, like you said, for 3 years, we have tried to give it away. And we have not kept that a secret to anybody that wanted it. And I want to do like this gentleman did. I want to backtrack. The termites are not infested. They have ate the wood around the windows. I went in there. The people have taken the wood off the windows, and you can see the termites eating in it. So it's not infested that I know of. That's the only termites I've seen, but the floor's rotten. The living room, I took the light down, it's rotten. But we went over that, but it's sad for us too. It's right there on us. I knew the people who lived in it. And as you said, I don't know when this meeting is over, y'all will give our demolition company a date, and that's when it will be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Do I have any other questions from our board for staff or the applicant? See, he sees it too, Ms. Baker. You take all these notes and ready to rock and roll, and all of a sudden, nothing. Whatever. With that being said, if there is no more questions for the applicant or staff or the participants, is there any final arguments staff would like to make or the applicant would like to make before we get into deliberation? All right, hearing none. City attorney already advised us. We can go ahead and enter into deliberation. If we do not deliberate, I will gladly entertain a motion. So, it's sad, and I agree with my members here, but unfortunately, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I do believe in private property rights. Well, it's your land, you do what you want with it, but at the same token, I'm stuck in the fact that, this happens to be land on a historic district, where we look heavily on, preserving our past. But then again, it's private property. It's already to the point of, I write insurance all day. Just looking at these pictures, it's like, I would want a complete demolishment before it gets built again. There's nothing really to salvage here, maybe than a couple of the front pillars, unfortunately. Yeah, right. That's what I mean. Like, if anything were to happen, like Ms. Thomas said, Elon Musk comes in here, wants to salvage the property, I'm pretty confident he would tear down everything and keep a couple bricks just to say he had something of the original house. But that's my 2 cents on the deliberation. It's definitely a tough item.
Mr. Chair, if we're still deliberating.
Yeah, we're deliberating.
I want to, Board Member Montaldo, you said, well, now it's come to light and people know about it. I would say I've made multiple Facebook posts, social media posts about this. I've talked to as many developers as Mr. New has. I've talked openly. The church has talked openly. So I just I'm not trying to be contrary tonight, but I wanted to push back a little bit about that because in my mind, in my realm, what lets me know what the people really, really care about is what they will step up and do. And for 3 years, we have said, will somebody step up? So this has not been secret. This has not been kept in the dark. It's not coming to light tonight. We've had community conversations about this house for multiple years, and we just haven't been able to generate the interest. Now, and all the people that, I saw the same Facebook post, all the people that were on Facebook talking about what a disaster this is and how do they not know. I don't know how they don't know, but I have that problem across the board, right? Is how communicating information out to the public. We use more forums in this city to communicate to people than I know of any other city around. And we still will have somebody find out about something 3 years after the rest of us know about it and go on Facebook and say, how was I supposed to know about this? And then get other people stirred up. So this has been a community conversation for life. It's not coming to light tonight. We're just at the end of a sad process tonight that has been in the sunshine for everyone who has been paying attention to know about and have an opportunity to step forward and do something with. So I just wanted to add that deliberation in there. This is not coming to light tonight.
Thank you.
I will say too, that I remember when the church bought that building and it was for the youth. And the whole point of buying that building was to use for the youth. However, the church, and I don't believe many other people were aware of the cost that it was going to take to get it where the city would approve for things to be working. And trying to do that, like I said before, it's super expensive. I don't think that, well, first of all, forums, that's a whole nother issue, but I don't think most people realize the cost that goes into this. And the First Baptist Church has been very open, and they even had someone that bought it for $1 or something that I knew about. They've been really open about it and they tried their hardest to restore and redo and fix, and now it's come to the point where you're just like, what are you going to do? And I also wonder too, what is the liability on their property? Mm-hmm. If kids go in there and they play and fall through the floor, or God forbid someone is killed because they're on the second floor and fall out, who's liable for that? So I mean, there's all kinds of issues that a forum on Facebook can't understand until they're the property owner. And it's their responsibility. I mean, it's a huge responsibility.
May I say one thing?
No. After the deliberation, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you, Ms. Thomas. I mean, I run 3 of the biggest forums in the city. Yeah. Well, I'm admin on 3 of the biggest forums. God bless you. That's all I can say. And I say, ask Mayor Marlowe, like, I stopped jumping in, and because it's the 11 o'clock hour to everybody.
Yep, it is, but it's not.
You know, even like, for example, hey, guys, we're voting tomorrow, and people will still forget, oh, that's tomorrow? Yep. So, yes, to your point, it's very well spoken. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't going to say anything, but now I'm going to. So.
Can we go into recess mode?
No, we can't. So, the one, I want to go back to something that Ms. Thomas said about preserving, because we have a historic district, and I understand property rights, but there's no point of having a historic district if we're not going to try to preserve the buildings in it that are worth saving. And it was heartbreaking when I had to sit on this board and vote for the Kincaid building to be destroyed because it had sat there and rotted while the city tried to find a way to save it. But while I understand social media, sometimes you'll see posts and 15 people out of a city of 7,500 have really seen that post. I think that it can't have been that well known of an issue, and I knew about it, the building that we're talking about, if our city presentation did not include this information. And I think we need to examine why that is and why our presentation didn't have a timeline of what the city commission has done and a timeline of what has been done to save this building in our packet for us to review.
I have to
Thank-
agree.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to know, okay, at what point was it condemned? How long ago was that? Because I am new to the area, so this is coming to light for me. I just learned about it a couple days ago. I've been reading this thing, trying to inform myself. So at the point that it was condemned, could it have been saved at that point? I know it would be expensive. These things are extremely expensive.
Maybe 10
Could we
years
have
ago.
fundraised? Could we have done something to help the church? Could we have done anything to keep that building alive, to help them preserve it over that time while they figured it out instead of letting it rot? These are just questions that I have as someone who doesn't know. So I'm coming into it looking at it from a different perspective, and yeah, we weren't informed. So I have, the inspection about the termites, how bad is it? How rotted is it? Are there pictures of the inside? Those are things that I'm missing. But I mean, I really don't think we can save it, and that's sad. I feel like I'm missing some of that to help me make that decision.
So with us being a historic and architectural review board, I said it jokingly to Member Long, and I kind of said it out, where it's like I feel like the downtown historic area needs an HOA, just to, and I don't mean an HOA in the sense of like Newberry Oak subdivision or whatnot, but in a sense like your grass is too long, or you can't have. You need to cut down your tree or, but in the sense of there needs to be like a sort of a checks and balance if we're going to keep the historic preservation going on, because in the insurance industry, we always say, a $5 problem today turns into a $50,000 problem next year. Like, take care of the $5 problem now, because it does get expensive. Absolutely, 100%. However, it doesn't get expensive if people maintain it when they can. And I feel like going forward as a historic, I feel as an historic board, we have, like Ms. Baker said, we do have a duty to try to preserve what is, God, that sounds so wrong, but what is left of downtown Newberry, We've torn down, a couple things already. We're moving at a fast pace, and I would like to see more of a preservation done in downtown. And I feel like even though this has already gone to the point of no return, however, I feel like going forward for city staff, for our board, for future board members to come, I think it would behoove us to look into some way, somehow of, how do we stop it from getting to a certain point? How can we continuously preserve our city historically? So to validate your point, Ms. Thomas and Ms. Parker, I kind of feel like, and Ms. Baker, I think it is our duty, and the citizens depend on us to keep stuff like this. But in this situation, unfortunately, it's already. It's just gone too far.
Well, maybe this is our 11th hour to figure out how to save the existing, not this home per se, but the existing buildings. Maybe after tonight, this is a jumping off point to visit, maybe starting a process that the older buildings would be, like the Bank of Newberry. That building is amazing. The buildings on that whole strip. And I've said before, I lived in Germany for a long time, and they take old buildings and they put McDonald's in them. I know it can be done because I've seen it. And these buildings are way older than our buildings in Germany, so it can be done. But I think we need to start a process of that and not expect someone like, a private owner like the church to foot the bill for everything. We need to start at the beginning, like you said. A $5 problem today becomes, so we need to start at $5
Right.
and not at 100,000.
Right.
So maybe that's something we can revisit and figure out how to, because I have no idea how that would work, but we have enough intelligent people in this group, we can figure it out, I'm sure. But doing this at the last minute is not, in my opinion, it's not gonna work. You just take it brick by brick, board by board, and
Yeah.
it's done. I mean, it's no good.
I was gonna wait until after we were out of quasi judicial, but the city has fought really hard
Yep.
for a CRA. And the CRA has elements in there that can do everything that we're talking about doing. We're just right at the beginning of that. So it's not pertinent to this applicant's question,
Right.
but this board is clearly focused on how do we generate that. We have a vehicle that we just successfully negotiated. It was the end of a 30-year negotiation with the county, but we got it now. It's generating money, and part of that money can go into historic preservation grants. So I wanted to say we'll have the opportunity to ask staff to put that on an agenda in the future.
Okay.
To have that conversation.
That'll be good. That'll be good.
Perfect.
All right, do we have any other deliberations on the topic at hand? All right, with that being said, I will entertain a motion.
Move the motion to approve.
Well, since staff changed their wording or their recommendation to approving, does he have to specialize which one he's approving?
The motion would be either to disapprove the demolition of the structure
Or to
and
approve.
issue a certificate of appropriateness, or to approve the demolition of the structure and issue a certificate of appropriateness for either the denial or the approval of the demolition.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
So I have a motion to approve from Vice Chair Long. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Parker. Is there any comments on the current motion on the floor from my dais? All right, do I have any public comments on the motion on the floor?
No, I've just got some. I'll give information to you after you vote.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with this.
All right, so no comments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, did I get all ayes on that? Sorry, hearing 6 people is tough.
Aye.
Yeah, I'm looking at Ms. Baker. Okay, so we got it's unanimous 6-0 to approve. All right, we will move on to, we are still in quasi judicial. You could present that. We're moving on to another one, but you could definitely present that to the city.
I just want to comment to you, if you don't mind.
Can I allow a comment? Yes? Okay, go ahead.
If you want to know about a historical building, our church is the oldest church in Newberry. It's 110 years old. And if you had to spend the money we spend on it to keep it up, we couldn't do both of them. You follow me?
Yeah.
So if y'all want to start collecting $5, we'll take them.
Well, I tell you what, I do appreciate hearing that bell ring early on Sunday morning. So, all right, with that, we'll move on to our fourth item of public hearing.
Mr. Chair, this is resolution number CA 2022-04, a resolution of the Historic Architectural Review Board of the City of Newberry, Florida, for approval of a certificate of appropriateness as authorized under section 11.11 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations for the construction of a detached single-family home on land which is within the historic district located at 144 Southwest 258th Street, tax parcel number 02283-003-000, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is passed. Resolution number CA 2022-04 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you.
Sir.
All right. Do we have any ex parte communications on this particular item, Ms. Parker? No. No, I have none. All right, staff, will you please provide us with an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, John Paul with the City of Newberry Planning and Economic Development Department. Sorry, I'm having such trouble with this clicker. The request before you is to construct a single-family home within the City of Newberry Historic District at 144 Southwest 258th Street, just north of the Little Red Schoolhouse. Here's an aerial showing you the property. It's currently vacant. Based on my research, it has always been vacant. I have not been told otherwise. They're going to be constructing a 1,358 square foot home with a 454 foot garage. Site is approximately 1/4 of an acre. Single family district, single family future land use. Here is the proposed roof plan and floor plan for the home. It's a combination of gable and hip roof. And this is the proposed elevation. The contractor is Steve Ayub, working with Pat Post. We've had a conversation with him to do some improvements to the property. This is another home of a very similar style built in the city of Newberry already. We've asked him to put in some decorative brackets on the eaves, as well as an eyebrow roof over the front window. He's agreed to that. We've also provided him with additional suggestions that make it more contextually appropriate for the historical district. These are examples of what those would look like, not in plan view, so you can see what they would be adding to the home. And staff finds the request consistent with the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan, Land Development Regulations, and would recommend the board approve with staff suggested condition. That completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, JP. Is the applicant present? Are they not?
They are not present, unfortunately.
Oh, that's great. All right, so there is no applicant present. Staff already gave us recommendations. Is there any public comments? All right, hearing none. I take it you're not going to cross-examine yourself, so we're going to keep moving here. Members of the dais can ask questions to the chair, to the staff, since the applicant's not available.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have just one comment. It looks like the applicant has, and the staff have worked out, a facade that looks like it'll be a contributing structure, but I was wondering if the garage door, I've got something I'd just like to pass around to the board as a suggestion to put lights, windows in the garage door to make it look. We've done, a job adding those architectural details to it to make it comply, but it seemed like the garage door looks like a standard door. I think it would look better and contribute more to the character of the district if something like that was put in. I don't know if that could be a condition, that they put some kind of a door with lights, windows in it. So.
I have a few questions, but I'll let my board go ahead. Yeah. All right, so staff, so I've noticed a lot of the housing, more and more in the historic district are like JM or masonry type builds. How does this frame with the siding hold up? And especially, if I'm not mistaken, historically, we were always metal for roofing versus shingles. I do know that there is some shingles in the historic, but when we did some research before, metal was actually the original way of roofing for the historic district.
Yeah.
How is that impacting?
So material, the 5 metal roof is
Right.
traditional for northern Florida, and the standing seam metal for more coastal areas, part of the vernacular. The style of the home, the closest I can pin it to, is called a minimal traditional style home. Those are all of the homes that you're seeing in Avalon Woods or other newer developments. That's the style that it falls under. And there are some embellishment. That style is derived from other more traditional styles. It's just more minimal than those traditional styles. Adding embellishments such as the eyebrow roof or brackets help embellish or make it more decorative in nature. one aspect of a historic district is that they're representative of the time that they're built. That's what makes historic structures important, is that they are kind of time capsules of the time period in which they're built. So with newer homes, you have newer construction methods, and typically those homes will represent that time period in which they were constructed, which makes it significant.
So no offense to cookie cutter homes, because I live in a cookie cutter home in a subdivision. One thing I love about historic downtown areas is that none of the homes are cookie cutter. They are very individualized. This home represents pretty much the cookie cutter home layouts that we see all over Newberry, now invading the historic district. Where I would like, me personally, and I don't know if my board agrees to this, but when we talk about historic district, we want to see something similar to what we're seeing next door to the church that's being demolished. You know, something unique. You know, sure, if you're going to do framing housing and shingle housing, that's fine, but it's very cut and dry, this type of home that I'm seeing here. And it's just concerning that it's just like, well, this is the layout I have. It's very simple. It's the cheapest way. Let's build something on it. When I feel like the historic should be taken a little bit more consideration with, you know, the type of roofing. The suggestions, I love your suggestions, you know, with the shuttering. What our member just brought up, something as simple as the garage windows. Things that give this a unique style that's not your typical cookie cutter design that you have 5 to choose from the rest of the subdivision.
That comes with design guidelines for the historic district. That's something that we could work on.
Okay.
So when projects do come forward, there's, you know, clear expectations of what's needed for.
What, am I doing something wrong?
No.
Oh. Sure. Okay. Okay, so that's really where I'm at, is just how does this really match? Like, you're literally getting a house like from where I live in Oakview Village, and I'm gonna make this cookie cutter home and put it right smack in the historic district, where it doesn't appeal to red bricks, it doesn't appeal to the facade that's going on, you know, it doesn't appeal to the typical metal roof. Even though it's current of what's going on in Newberry, I don't feel like that truly would represent the historic values of the historic district and what Newberry looks like in the historic area. That's where I kind of feel like there should be a little bit more on the suggestion and improvements for the home, per se. Yes, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
We just passed the overlay district, and we had a long conversation about how the overlay district was not going to extend through the historic district because the historic district had its own design standards. So the board is honing in on my only question, so y'all are doing a great job asking. But I was under the impression that we do have design standards for the historic district that would enforce that the things that go into the historic district would fit the character. And the reason why we didn't take the overlay district through the historic district, because we didn't want to have 2 competing design standards. So we not have design standards in the historic district? I thought we already did.
We don't have design guidelines. Design standards, yes, but design guidelines, no. Design guidelines is basically like a picture book or a instruction book for developers when coming into a district of the acceptable styles for a district. That's not present in our code.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we table this until we get this answered, because I was under the impression that we had design standards.
I thought we did have a certain standard of historic building structures, the face of the structures. If I'm not mistaken, that we did see this one time before come to the board as to what the historic district face should look for each one of the homes, kind of something similar to what they should look like. I can't believe what it was.
I can't put my finger on it either, but I know specifically we didn't take the urban, we didn't take the overlay district through the historic district because we didn't want to have competing design.
Yeah, I remember
standards.
that when I first got on the board, we had something that was presented to us that gave us some kind of indication of the historic district and what kind of buildings were allowed inside that district.
Yeah, I mean, and even the roof shaping on this, I mean, it's like almost 90% hip versus a lot of the historic. You see a lot of the gables, you know, the different pinnacles,
Pillars.
yeah,
stuff
and
like
this
that.
is just like I said. This is very, to me, this was a very cookie cutter design to just slap right into the middle of the historic district. I'm not very comfortable at all with even moving forward with this kind of. I know right now we're just asking questions.
I'm not the applicant, so if
Yeah.
the board wants to table
Yeah.
the agenda item, feel free.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack the board here. I just coming from a city that just pretty much did whatever they want. I kind of feel like I owe it to Newberry to make sure that we are doing right in a historic district. So I'm sorry if I hijacked the board a little bit here.
Somebody's asked me to swear them in.
Absolutely, I would love to hear this person.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Can you tell me your name? Margaret Lloyd. You didn't tell me your right name.
So no pressure to the board. I will say that Miss Lloyd is one of them.
I
know
live
you're
on
not-
that block.
She lives on this block, but not just that, but she is one of the most, like, someone I would really highly opinionate for historic stuff. So please.
Okay, one of the comments I want to make is, what is on that block? There are two old structures, one of which I think used to be a lunchroom. They're two very small structures. There's a prefab house next to mine, which is in this block. There is a trailer, which is very nice with a lot of land. There's my house, which is more in lines with this design. So there's nothing historic there except maybe the old lunchroom for the Little Red Schoolhouse, which is a very small building. If it has 2 bedrooms, I'd be surprised. So you maybe want to keep historic district, but there's nothing in that block that is historic. So this one house that looks like a modest house, it would look 3 bedrooms, I saw from the plans. But just, you know, I understand about keeping things in the historic district historic, but what is there now that should make a difference? That's what I have to say.
Can we make a comment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, that is the old lunchroom. That heads me straight back to our conversation about the house. Are we going to save that? Are we going to save that old lunchroom? My grandparents ate in there, and my mom. There's also a rock building that's on the property of the high school that was our lunch. The weight room was our lunchroom. There's a house right across from yours, Peggy, that is an old farm-style house. It's built up off the ground. It's been Lucy McKinney.
Yes.
Sarah lives there now. That had grant money from the city to redo the roof and the plumbing and the electric, because that house is extremely old. There's a couple of houses down from there, like the old Bowden house, and there's one behind it that's extremely old as well. But I understand what you're saying, like, there's such a wide variety in that neighborhood. There's more than one trailer, too, I believe. And if you look at that block, there's like, right. So my question is, I guess, if we're going to become serious, and I believe the city is and has been for years, about a historical district, wouldn't it be important to start putting these restrictions on
And that's
things
what,
regardless of what's there already?
Right,
To
that's
go
where-
ahead and have a jumping off point and say, okay, from this point forward, this
Right.
is
That-
what we're doing to preserve that area, because there are some older,
and this is where I'm
older
at with
houses
this.
there.
I don't want to keep approving stuff that's
Right.
if you're not in historic district, understandable, or
Right.
if you don't want to be in a historic district
Right.
and you're willing to be cut off, understandable. However, this even though there is no per se historic right next door or
Right.
whatnot, it's still in the historic district. It's still valued as a historic district. Therefore, I will say that this should be more. This should have more. We need more attention on this, and I do agree that this should be tabled. This should be tabled until more information is acquired. Because I don't want to say, well, there's nothing there now, or there's a mobile home right next door. house saying, I don't care. It's
Yeah, there
like
are a
we
lot of
don't,
different
two rights don't
structures.
make, I mean, two wrongs don't make a right
Right,
here.
there are a lot of different structures
Right.
there.
Yeah.
There are some older buildings as well, so, I mean, if you're gonna do it, I mean, this is a good place to just say, like,
Right.
I think that's
This
the
is
whole
how it's
aspect
gonna
of-
be.
Of setting a precedent.
Yep.
Right,
This
going
is how it's
forward.
gonna be.
And say, okay, well, this one's all right, well, why can't mine be that
Right.
way?
Right.
And so on and so forth, and this is gonna maintain the character of downtown.
I kind of feel like we jump from asking questions to deliberation.
Yeah.
So, at this point, I mean, does anybody have any questions for staff? We can keep deliberating on, but I think we all have a common consensus on this one. Yeah, I'm in agreement with my vice chair, and I think with most of the board. I don't know if I can vote on a motion to table, or if that has to be someone else from the
No,
board.
don't vote on it, as the chair, and this, you don't need a second. Comes right up for vote.
I did have a quick question for
Yes.
staff. You said that there were guidelines, but not standards, or vice versa, for the look of the house. You said that we have to have like a picture book, but we had something else in place. What is the difference?
I think that's a matter of the question from the mayor, and it's something that we'll come back to the board with. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, you do vote, you can't make the motion.
To table it.
Correct.
But someone else has to make the motion.
Correct.
I can only second it, correct? Okay, so as a chair, I have power, but not that much power, so I cannot make a motion. I can only second a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to table.
Okay, I have a motion to table from Ms. Parker. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Ms. Thomas. Do we have any comments on the motion of tabling?
Don't
Yeah.
we have to table it to a date certain?
Do we have to table it to a date certain, or can we leave it open?
That would be best, table.
Okay, what kind of date we think? Staff, how much time would you guys need, or what date would you like to table it to?
The next meeting is December 5th. Since this is not the city's petition, we don't have a preference, but we can communicate, we can make a time certain for December 5th, and then if need be, we can continue again.
Okay. Does December 5th work for you, Ms. Parker? For the motion? Okay, can you go ahead and just amend your motion to table to December 5th?
I amend my motion to table this for December 5th.
All right, and does a second agree?
Second, yes,
Okay.
I agree.
Do we have any public comments on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, we motion to table this to the next meeting on December 5th. All right, and I believe that brings us out of quasi judicial. We're moving to the agenda items, update on funded state small matching grant for historic resource. Jesus, man, what a tongue twister. Updated on funded state small matching grant for historic resources survey. All right, say that 5 times fast.
So I did have a presentation for this, but
You did? Uh-oh, I missed it.
but it doesn't look like it was included. Just briefly, we have a fully executed small matching grant. It was fully executed on October 6th. We're now working with finance to publish the RFP, so we hope to have an update for you guys shortly with a contract and start getting some of that money put to use so we can update it. Our historic resource survey, which was done last in 2011. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that information, JP. All right, we'll move on to topics for members' discussion. Ms. Parker, anything you want to share?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, just glad to see you and have you back. Missed you on the last one. That's just really what it is. Oh. Ms. Thomas.
No.
Ms. Baker. Member Long, Vice Chair Long?
No.
I don't have any topics at the moment.
I just want to commend JP, threw some curveballs tonight, and he handled them well.
He definitely handled this
yeah.
through a lot of
Let's just be honest. That's why we hired ASO to come tonight, was just in case.
You don't see them licks coming there.
All right. Well, with that being said, the Historic and Architectural Review Board meeting is adjourned. All right. We're gonna just take about a 5-10 minute bathroom break, and then we'll start the planning and zoning.
Hit you up before I walk out the door.
I'm sorry, we're not in Miami. This planning and zoning board meeting, it is 7:46. All right. Does board had a chance to review the agenda? If so, we have a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve agenda as published.
Okay, I got a motion
I second that.
and I got a second. Any comments on the agenda? Public comments on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Now, just to remind, Ms. Polo is absent, so our board is a 4-member board. The risk of just, not saying it's gonna happen, but there's always a possibility. If it is a split of 2-2, just be aware that it does go as a deny to the commission, deny a recommendation to the commission. But yeah, we definitely have a quorum, so we're good to go. Do I have a consent, move to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
All right, I got a motion.
I second that motion.
Second. All right. Since this is a different meeting, do I have to repeat this again?
We have
Yeah.
to vote on that motion.
What? Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry. All those in favor of the consent agenda, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, so City of Newberry quasi-judicial proceeding procedures. We are entering into a quasi-judicial procedure. This means that the commission will stop being a legislative body and will become a judicial board, which means that we have to follow certain rules and adhere to different standards of decision-making. Primary rule we must follow concerns testimonies, and the substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when the judicial board makes a decision. This standard states the following: all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving an opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. At which point we will have the attorney read into the ordinance. Then I'll ask the clerk, actually, if anybody's going to speak on any of these topics today, or this one topic today, I would ask you to please stand up, state your name, and Janine will collectively swear everybody in.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I know your names, I know your name, I know your name. You are Diane, okay? Okay, got it.
All right. Now that everybody's been sworn in, we will disclose. Do we have any ex parte communications on any of the items today? No, I have none. Then the way this works in the order of presentation is staff will give their overview, then the applicant will give their present their application. Staff will go ahead and give their report and recommendation with no time limit. There have been no third-party interveners, so we could skip that. We will go to public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. The applicant at that point may cross-examine. Staff may cross-examine. Then the members of the decision-making body through the chair may ask questions of the staff, applicant, and the participants. We will go into final arguments may be made by the applicant, the staff, related solely to the evidence and testimony presented at the hearing and introduced to the record. Then the city attorney actually can advise the decision-making body as to applicable law and factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. And deliberation of the application. After deliberation, a vote shall be taken to approve approval conditions, continue or deny the application. I guess I could just ask the city attorney now to advise the decision-making body.
It's substantial and competent evidence, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. With that being said, I will also ask the attorney to read into the ordinance or read into the record?
Mr. Chair, this is Resolution 2022-74, SDP 22-12, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving an application for site and development plan approval for construction of a 4,500 square foot commercial building, including a drive-through restaurant use and related site development in a commercial intensive CI zoning district pursuant to Section 14.12 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, generally located at the northeast corner of Southwest 4th Avenue and US Highway 41, parcel number 1945-001-000, on 0.78 acres within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida. Repealing resolutions in conflict, providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2022-74 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Attorney. Staff, will you lead the way in presenting or giving us your overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, John Paul Perez with Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you tonight is for site and development plan approval for 4,500 square feet of commercial use, which includes a drive-through restaurant. Here is the general location of the property within the city limits. Here's an aerial of the subject property just north of the Oakview Middle School on US 41 and Southwest 4th Avenue. Here's a shot of the property from the corner. It's currently a vacant lot. The future land use is commercial. The zoning is commercial intensive. Again, some of the basic information about the property. This also is in the Gateway Overlay District, so there's additional design standards in which they need to meet. Here's the site plan. The red box is the building where the commercial uses will be located. It's currently shown as 4 bays, but this is a vanilla box, so those bays can become 4, 2, or just 1 tenant. So they will subdivide those as this comes along. There is 1 bay, the bay all the way to the west, which is a drive-through restaurant, which has been designed for a specific use case. So there will be that drive-through restaurant there. In the blue is the stormwater retention area, and the brown box, the northeast, is the waste, the dumpster enclosure, so it's all the way at the rear, so it won't be an eyesore. And ingress and egress will be off of Southwest 4th Avenue. Here is the south elevation. This is what's going to be facing Southwest 4th Avenue. The architectural design that they've gone with here, based on some of the requests from, or some of the guidance provided by Commission during the development of the overlay standards, a more rustic look with stone and wood veneer. And this is the west elevation. This is what's going to be facing US 41. Here you can see that architectural treatment wraps around the building. On the north and part of the east elevation, there's no treatment on those sides, but those won't be visible from the right-of-way. Here's the landscape plan, much improved from what was originally submitted, but they did a great job on the site plan, or on the landscape plan. Substantial amounts of landscaping along that main corridor there, as well as the site generally, and a nice buffer for the adjacent residential uses. This is the current sidewalk that runs near the property. And one of the things that we looked at during the site plan review process was adding sidewalks. There are no connecting sidewalks on the north side of 4th Ave or on US 41. Ultimately, we made a mutual decision to not have them put them in at this time. Would be something that would be looking for FDOT to do on US 41, or if there was a more comprehensive plan to do sidewalks along the entire north side of Southwest Fourth Avenue. At that time, we would want them to put in, we would, make their approach of putting in sidewalks in that area. But right now, there are sidewalks on the west side of US 41 and on the south side of Fourth Ave. One of the conditions that we are asking for is a 10-foot utility easement along the eastern property line. Right now, we're working with the applicant to, while they have the earth open, they're putting in some water lines, and we're working with them in that process. Part of that is a 30-foot utility easement, and about 10 feet of that lie on their property and 20 feet on the eastern property. And so we're just asking that they provide that additional 10-foot utility easement, which is mainly just landscaping on their side, shouldn't be an issue. Staff finds the request consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations. At the pleasure of the board, you may recommend approval with staff suggested condition. If this does move forward, it should be heard by the Board of Adjustment on November 28th, 2022. And that completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, JP. The applicant, Mr. Potts, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you, Mr. Chair?
Good, thank you.
While we're waiting for Gene to put it up, Chris Potts, Director of Engineering for JB Pro, and I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of Florida and Georgia. A lot of our presentation is going to cover several items that John Paul already mentioned, but we'll just go through it. And if there's any questions from the board at the end, we'll be happy to address those. As mentioned, the site is located in the northwest corner of Southwest 4th Avenue and US Highway 4127. Acreage is roughly 7.8 acres, a little less than an acre. The zoning is commercial intensive, which drive-throughs are appropriate as a use. And so we are just north of the middle school. So this is the proposed site plan, a 4,500 square foot building. Right now, we are showing 4 potential divisions within the building for tenants, and the far western one is set up for a drive-through with the restaurant. Based on the city's requirements, 30 parking spaces are required, and we're meeting that. We are providing 30 parking spaces and 2 handicap spaces as well, and then we do have on-site retention. The interesting about this one is it does have a traditional stormwater basin, but we also have some underground stormwater just in front of the building to compensate for our land size. To the north of the stormwater basin, there's an existing depression that receives water from the coffee shop and development to the north. So we wanted to make sure that those were separated. So that is the reason for the abnormal shape of that stormwater basin. As John Paul mentioned, we accept the condition of the utility easement. The purpose of the utility easement is we've been working with Public Works and Jamie Jones. Some of the neighboring residents are having issues with their septic system. One of them is a elderly woman who is having, basically she can't use her plumbing currently. So we're working with the city to extend wastewater to that point. And that's the purpose of that utility easement on the eastern side, as you can see. So we've been working through an agreement with the city staff and Public Works to make sure that we can extend sewer to serve those that are in need. And so that's the purpose for that condition, which we accept. And then these are the building elevations, as John Paul mentioned. The south and western elevations have the nice architectural features. And then again, the northern and eastern side, which are considered the back of the house, which will not be seen from any of the vehicular or highway right-of-ways, do not have those characters. So we gratefully request that the Planning and Zoning Board approve our site plan as submitted, and we do accept the condition from city staff. And if there's any questions, we'll be happy to address them.
All right, thank you, JP. I appreciate that. I'm sorry. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Well, public comments. At this moment, anybody from the public wishing to make any kind of comments, it's limited to 3 minutes. All right, hearing none, the applicant, you can cross-examine. All right, and staff. All right. And members of the decision-making body through the chair may ask questions of the staff, the applicant, or the participants. I only have one question. I mean, you guys did a phenomenal job on this. I appreciate the layouts and working with staff. Do we have an idea of what the construction type is gonna be of the building? Is it gonna be your typical, masonry? Is it gonna be pre-engineered? Is it gonna be frame? Or is it too early to tell at this point? Are you guys just waiting on?
Not at the moment, it's going to be masonry.
Okay.
So they're obtaining bids, and hopefully, once we get through the approval, break ground at the end of the year or beginning of the year.
Okay, so it's gonna be your typical joist and masonry then?
Correct.
Okay, and it's like flat roof?
Yes.
Okay. It was just more of understanding the kind of build out, it's just gonna be like a metal prefabricated metal building, or if it's gonna be an actual.
Yeah, it'll be a structure.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody on my board have any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Or
I only have one
anybody?
question. Anybody like? It's, thanks. Could you briefly go over what the traffic from this will be?
As far as the number of trips,
Yes, sir, please.
so currently, the hours of operations for most of the businesses will be off-peak from the school, so they would not be conflicting with that sort of traffic. Right now, there are no determined tenants at the moment. So without that information, it's hard to generally state the demand of the traffic. There has been some interest, but there's no one that is yet confirmed to be part of the building. But most of the traffic would be a typical, even from the restaurant side, the tenant that they're looking at is mostly a afternoon to evening restaurant. So it would be off hours from the middle school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you guys, even though whoever the prospect is for there, being that it's afternoon to dinner, is there a possibility for like the lunch hour? If so, would that be something that would, like traffic patterns, would that be concerning with the school?
No, depending on, again, middle school doesn't quite get out at the lunch hour.
Right, they got out like two,
Yeah, they're shifted later.
almost 3 o'clock.
So it really, for most restaurants, from 3 o'clock to the 4 are kind of a low peak hour time.
Any other questions from our board? No. None. All right. If I got no other questions, we already got, you can final arguments, or we could defer. We're good. Deliberation. If no deliberation, I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve.
All right, I got a motion to approve from Ms. Baker.
I second that motion.
I have a second from Member Long, Vice Chair Long. All right, any comments on the motion from the dais? Any comments on the motion from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimous. I think that's the fastest crisp. Just remember that, man. That was like the fastest one we ever did. All right, so we are out of quasi judicial. And I will open it up for topics for members' discussion.
Hang on, wait a second.
Oh, wait, what?
What's the next thing say you're supposed to announce?
Agenda items?
Should the planning and
The red print? Sorry. I was going off of my packet, not this thing. Not that one. Sorry. All right, so we approve this. It'll, should the planning, yep. So the petition will be heard by the Board of Adjustment meeting on November 28th. Sorry about that. With that being said, topics for members' discussion. I'm not missing anything, right? Okay. Ms. Thomas.
No.
Ms. Baker. All right, I got a few topics. Want to remind everybody that we got the rodeo coming up. It's a great event, Lions Club in Town Center. It's an awesome community event. It's great to see the community get together. We also have the festival happening, our Seaboard Drive, right? I say it's Main Street, but Seaboard Drive. So that is happening the same day on the 19th as the festival. So it's going to be a busy day, busy weekend for our little town. And we definitely look forward to seeing everybody. Huh? I was about to. And then the Veterans Day.
You said a couple things.
Yeah, I said a couple things. Appreciate you stopping interrupting me.
I'm trying to help.
And then we have veteran. I'll let you. There's a veterans, the biker. I'll let you get into a little bit more details. But Veterans Day is coming up this week. Want to just thank all those who served currently and former veterans. Thank you for your services. We definitely appreciate you. JP, you're a service member? Well, thank you for your service, JP. Huh?
That's why you took them punches well.
This is nothing like
Yeah, this is nothing. I got this. Well, we do appreciate your service. Thank you, JP. All right, Mr. Mayor, I'll let you talk on the.
Well, the Bikers on Parade is this is going to be kind of exciting. It's the first time that Newberry has hosted them, but Bikers on Parade is the largest veterans fundraiser that happens in Alachua County. They're going to start at Santa Fe College like they normally do, but they're going to end right out here at the town center. So the city has partnered with them. We're going to unroll that big flag to welcome them in. You've probably seen the banner across the road already. And then don't forget the rodeo is also Friday night. So it'll be the 18th and the 19th. And you know I enjoy sitting on my back porch and listening to the results of all of that. It's a couple nights out of the year. It's fun to listen to. So if we can all remember that, where if you're not there, you're still probably in town having a good time with it. So come on out and check it out. It's a great community event. So, and if you hear all those motorcycles revving through on Sunday, right, come out to the stop sign, wave a flag, welcome all those vets into town. Let's show them how much we appreciate them. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Attorney, staff. All right. With that being said, we can stay here for another hour and a half just for tradition. I mean, or I could just call this meeting adjourned at 8:10.
I know, it's only 5.